So here's my next game on the table. I will be covering Napoleon at Austerlitz by 3W. It's copyright 1993. Matte graphics by Joseph Yost, and you don't get a tray in it, but these are all the units. So you have the French and the Austrians nicely broken down into various corps or divisions, Austrians and Russians, and then you have these Pollard units, which are step lost counters. So you can see units can have up to 10 original steps, going down to 9, all the way down to 1. So you can have some very large units and smaller units covering the same amount of space. Now it's very purple now. It's a bit paler in real life, but I do like the map because you can see the hues are not garish. They're quite pleasant, and you get a good sense of the hills up here, Pratzen Heights here, and leading down to Pheasantry, Sokolnitz and Telnitz here. It's an interesting map orientation for the solitaire player because it's orientated like this. You have the French on this side and the Austria allies on that side. So as a solitaire player, it's great. You can have them clash in the middle like that. Obviously opposed, one will sit there, one will sit there, and then you each have to read the turn record track and the terrain key a bit askance. Sorry about my setup. It's difficult to get in the corner, but I could have laid it out this way and taken one side, but I always tend to bias one side as a solitaire player until it's getting to the end and the other side's losing, or if the other side's losing, then I try much harder with the other side. So this is quite nice to sort of help me balance that out. So here, yes, so we have the heights. I guess these are the Pratzen Heights here. We have, is that marsh? No, yes, that's vineyards here of various villages. So we go all the way back. It's sort of the classic map for this situation. You see the same essentially in Napoleon's Triumph, the Gamers, Austerlitz game. And some others whose names don't jump to mind. The Stanton is here. Interestingly, it's only it's more defensible on one side only. So from the French view, you have Bagration here, don't you, threatening up. He can come around here, and I've played an introductory scenario of the game. So you get the main game, which is 18 turns long, each turn being a half hour from 8:30 to 5 on the day. Then they also offer some scenarios. There's the lower gold back, so you're concentrating around the gold back. Lands versus Bagration, that's what I played out. And then a Pratzen Heights only scenario. Now, I was really looking forward to this game because I do like going back to these older games that can be sort of maybe simplistic by today's standards, but quite refreshing often. And sometimes because the game hobby was developing then, often you see people trying out little innovations which sort of became fully fledged later on. So I was really looking forward to this game, and I played out already the Lands versus Bagration scenario, and there was something about it that disappointed me quite quickly, and I can't put my finger on it right now in recollection. That was about a week and a half ago. The day I got it in the post from Christoph Luppe from Board Game Geek. Thank you very much for this game. This video is dedicated to you. But yeah, so there was something it'd be interesting to investigate that. What I think is what this game attempts to do was address combined arms in a more realistic fashion than they had found before, and then the step loss system. So you can have units that don't just kind of like flip and then disappear, but it can last through many combats. Yeah, I think something that I found this was that essentially you needed to surround units, otherwise they were just retreating back. It was something in the CRT. So here's the rules. The rules itself is great. It's a how many page booklet? 15-page booklet. While I'm here, before I forget, it's designed by Jim Hind and Keith Poulter. So they essentially kind of both had two ideas and brought them together to design the game. So you start with historical, couple of pages, 3 pages of historical notes. That's always nice to set the scene. Even if you know it, it's nice to kind of have another look at it. Maybe someone else is slightly different. But then you have all the usual stuff. We start at the turn sequence, rally phase, movement, combat. There's defensive fire, offensive fire, and melee. That was very interesting. The defensive fire is quite, it's quite. You take losses when you go into attack, but because of the attritional nature, it's not necessarily decisive at one single point. And that's it. And then you have the other player turn. So got the usual stuff, and then the fire. Yes, so you have fire combat, in which case it's a strength. So it's based on the strength of the units firing. There's no differential, there's no combat odds, and you'll generally be doing 1 point, possibly 2. I guess on the rare occasion you will get this. Normal unit's going to be maximum 10, I think. I saw. So you're very rarely going to get those high results. It's modified by terrain, enfilade. Morale, yes, that's factored into the firing, and sort of if the allies are fighting together, they're not quite as effective. Then that you also can have melee, so you move into melee, and now you come to an odds, and essentially it was like disruption and retreat, disruptions and retreats. So with some losses in the higher odds. So it was, I think that was my disappointment, was I was thinking, that the melee is not really decisive, and I suppose it's realistic, because generally what happened in this era, when they went in for melee, one side ran away or broke quite quickly. They didn't sit there hacking at each other. We'll see how it plays out. I shouldn't be biased just from one initial quick look. And then there's a terrain effects chart. Rest of the rules is all quite clear. And then victory conditions and setup. Oh yes, and also formation demoralization. So the Allies have these columns and advance guards, and the reserve. The French have different corps. The 4th corps is broken down into different divisions. They all have a possibility of being individually demoralized, which immediately, if that happens, then all of those units disrupt and will flee at a certain movement rate, so they would essentially move off the board. So you just might be able to preserve them. The victory conditions, where are they? Victory conditions, campaign game. Each side has a victory point for a strength point lost, etc. Leaders. Also, the Allies only receive victory points for certain geographical locations. So, those are things like telnets, sokolnets, and so forth around there. So if the Allies perform their original plan and don't take too many losses, they could win. Otherwise, the French are just out to give them a mauling. So we'll see how it plays out. I'll show you the setup and talk a bit more once I got back into the game, and then Probably a bit about gameplay, maybe an example of play if it's kind of necessary later on. Okay, it's probably just about possible to get a good idea of the setup for this game from that angle. It's if I came closer, I'd be hitting this piece of furniture would get in the way. So I will move closer in a bit, but just for this broad angle view, we're looking from the west. North is facing this way. So this is the French side. These green stars indicate victory points, hexes for the Allies. They get 5 victory points, no, 3 each for 5 here. So there's 15 victory points here. And this is also the entry area for, was it Davout's 3rd Corps? When they come on at 10 AM, which is, the game starts at 8:30, so that'll be on the 4th turn of the game. The Allies, for each of these hexes of Telnitz, they get 15 victory points. They get 10 for each of Sokolnitz, 1 for Kolnitz Castle. They get 40 here for Turas, kind of like a random village more or less in the middle of the French rear area, and they can get 50 for taking the road here to, I believe, Vienna. And also there's 20 victory points for taking the Santon Redoubt there. So the French setup is a lot freer than the Allied in that the French, Legrand's division of the 4th Corps can set up between here and here. Oh, I just realised I put him over the gold back. Behind the gold back, between Kobelnitz and Telnitz. So he's got infantry, cavalry here, artillery here, and infantry here. So the artillery is essentially covering 4 hexes this way, and then they've got infantry covering here and their flank there. Then we have Hilaire's division of the 4th Corps here. He has his cavalry on the left flank. The Guard and the Bessières are back here. Guard cavalry here. Soult himself, in charge of the 4th Corps, is here, and he has Van Damme's division here, with their cavalry on the left as well. Murat is here with his reserve cavalry around and in the village of Gertzikowitz. Napoleon himself is up here on the Zuran hill, and Oudinot has his heavy infantry units lined up on the road ready to march out, whilst Lannes with the 5th Corps has his artillery in Santon, some infantry, again his cavalry on the left, and his infantry kind of circulated around there ready to hold that position, but the road is clear if Oudinot wishes to move up. Actually, the stacking this is interesting, that stacking counts throughout the whole turn. You can have 10 strength points at any point. For example, Oudinot's all start at 9. You get some going down to 3, maybe 4 even in the 4th Corps. Bernadotte with the 1st Corps has all 8s, and some artillery here. So I just realised that the Santon Redoubt's sitting astride the road. If there's any person really stacked in it, it's going to block the road for other units moving through. We'll see how that fares. Then the setup for the Allies is a lot more fixed. So essentially it says there's this hex and you have to be either adjacent or within 2 hexes depending on which one it is. So we have the advance guard around here, first column next to them under Duktorov. We have Langeron with the 2nd column here. He has cavalry and artillery out front, the same in the 1st column. Then we have Pribswitz with all infantry. Yeah, he has no cavalry at all, but fairly strong infantry, 6s, 8s and 7s, and 2 artillery at the front there. Then back here we have Liechtenstein with the cavalry in the 5th column, so that they should sweep through here. And then in the 4th column, Miloradovich and Koloratz, artillery out front, and the Austrians very uniform, all 6 strength infantry units, and Miloratz with 8, 5, 4 and 6. Then here we have the Guards Grenadiers, they are all 8, 7, and the heavy artillery unit there of Constantine. And then Bagration here with 8s and 9s and 3 cavalry units, total of 14 strength points of cavalry there, and a little bit of artillery. So he has a strong force there, not in the terms of units, but in the terms of the strength. That is the strongest. Then it would be them. So, it's interesting that Murat has 10, 15, 20, so 30, about 33 strength, 40 of cavalry there. Bagration here has, what did I say, 16, and the reserve here is 20. So they might be able to sort of meet and equal each other out, though I suspect. So yeah, the morale of the French is higher, which is going to make a difference in combat for combat shifts. So to get a bit more of an overview view, as it were. So these are victory point objectives. Here's the I think I'm going to move these out the way so that they're not in the way, but just leave them kind of there to remind me. These are victory point objectives. So here's the Legrand's folks, and here's the advance guard, 1st column and 2nd column, 3rd column here, ready to come over the heights or down through the valley to Prats. Meeting Hilaire's division here with the guard behind. Here is Murat and all his reserve cavalry, guard cavalry just here. There's Soult himself. So his 4th corps is stretched all the way down here, but he's concentrating himself here because commanders are very important in that each commander has a command number, and that's the distance, that's a radii, and also number of, it's kind of like not activations, because units can move and shoot, but you cannot move into a zone of control unless your leader commits you. So for example, Soult has 5, leadership of 5, so he could commit 5 of his units into an enemy zone of control, and once you're in a zone of control, if you're going to melee, you have to be committed again. So for example, Van Damme, who is a subordinate of Soult, has 3. So with Soult being there, but between the 8 of their units could advance into enemy zones of control and are thereafter melee if necessary. Roland, for example, has 4. Napoleon's got 6. And also leaders have a bonus for rallying units stacked with. Bernadotte only has 2, so he's going to have to keep his units fairly close to. No unit out of 2 hexes will be able to, will be able to move into an enemy zone of control. It's not that you have to retreat from it if an enemy moves into yours. And then likewise, because Legrand is over here, and he has a range of 3. 1, 2, 3. He's not really in the range of anyone. I could put him here, and he could reach all of these, but then here he's got the artillery. So he's kind of trying to work out where the main attack is. He might need to hold this line and leave that line to itself, and hopefully for Davout, I think it is, isn't it, the 3rd corps to catch any breakthrough there. On the Allied side, you have a leader here who's Kienmayer, has a 3, rally of bonus of no, leadership of 3, Duktarov of 2, and Langeron of 3. And 3, 3, 2, 3. Bagration's the best on 4. There's no overall leader for the Allies. The French have Napoleon, so he could go and assist anywhere. The Allies do not have that. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes, because on the face of it, it looks like I would say favours the French a lot. They don't have a significantly lesser number of units than the Allies, but what the Allies do have is a bit more strength in many of their units. So we'll see how that tells. And as usual, it's the classic Austerlitz situation. A heavy left hook meeting a lightly defended right, and then a major clash going to be happening in the middle and or to the other opposite end. So that is the setup for Napoleon at Austerlitz. I'll come back and try and catch that without too much glare, and we'll see how it fares.